This morning, I've kind of told everyone this already, but this morning I finished my last shift at McDonald's. So I'm kind of running a little, or not running. I don't have any sleep in my system right now. So if you guys see me drooping or falling over, it's just because I have a lack of sleep right now. So before we dive into the message, just open up in a word of prayer. Our Lord and Heavenly Father, we come to you today with our broken hearts, with our broken minds, Lord. But Lord, we know that we've come today for the purpose of we want to know you, we want to be closer, and we want to build a relationship with you more and more. Lord, this day, just be with us and guide us, Lord, as we learn more about you, as we make an intimate relationship with you, Lord. Just be with us for the rest of the day. So I think, amen. So, who or what is a disciple? Who can be a disciple? Who can't be a disciple? And finally, can we be a disciple? These are just some things or questions that I like to think of when it comes to discipleship. My answer to some of these questions, first of all, what is a disciple? Any follower of Christ. Generally, if you think of the word disciple, any disciple is relating to anyone that is a follower. So in this case, since we're all Christians, we're disciples, meaning we're all followers of Christ. Who can be a disciple? Anyone can be a disciple, and there certainly isn't anyone that cannot be a disciple as well. We have all decided that we want to be followers of Christ. Henceforth, we have also decided to become His own disciples. The moment that we have accepted Jesus Christ is the moment that we all know that we are and will be disciples of Christ. But before we fully embrace the fact that we are His disciples, or to those that are wanting to be seen as His disciples, it's a great feeling inside knowing that God is loving, caring, and passionate, and it's truly amazing. Yeah, we may know that God is like this, and I know that God isn't going to fail us for sure. But being a disciple isn't all that easy. When you become a disciple, there's a cost of becoming one. As it's already been read to us in Luke chapter 14, verses 25 to 34, we will see Jesus concerning about discipleship. So in the first condition, read in Luke 14, 25 to 26, it reads, "Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, He said, 'Anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple.'" First reading this, it struck me. Because in a way, it made me realize, or made me think, how can I hate my own mother or my own father? Or to even think, hate my own brother or sister? But generally, it's harder to think of us hating our own moms and fathers. Because in a way, if you think about it, they are the first two people that we've met. They're the first two people that has seen us grown, that has raised us, and finally nurtured us to how and who we are today. Thinking of our brothers and sisters, we generally fight with them, and generally sometimes it's become a normal thing for brothers and sisters to fight. But it's still difficult for us to hate them. If I were to imagine it like this, if we were just to think of the word hate, things that are associated with the word hate constantly comes with anger, hot-headedness, bitter. These are just things that are incorporated with it. But let's try to think of hate as a different word. Let's think of it as a means of loving less. So hate equals to love less. But then that would also come to think, in the Christian life, we are to make sacrifices, to love less of something that we love to do, or even to love less of those people that we love. What I mean by this is that we regard Christ above all things. We are to place Jesus above them. I.e., there are a lot of things in our life that we love to do. Hobbies, just regular tasks that we do every day. It's hard to say that we do not love these. There are things we hate, there are things we love. But to regard that we must put God above all of these. Meaning, you must love your parents, or you must love God more than you do your parents. It's hard for us to believe because the first people that came into our lives is our family. It's hard for us to just see it as that we don't love them as much as we do. Now, I'm not saying don't love your family, but what I'm saying is this. When you become a disciple, you should know that when you're following Christ, it's because you love Him with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. There's nothing wrong when it comes to loving our own flesh and blood. Just know that we as disciples must love who we follow, and that is Christ Himself. Moving on. Luke 14:27. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. We already know that we must love Christ more than we love our own family. Now, this next cost, or second condition, talks to us about carrying our own cross. Before I dove into this, I didn't really understood the meaning of carry their cross and follow me. But then I did a little research. I went on the web and did a lot of things, and it came to this. So what does the cross mean? In this day and age, people think that the cross generally would mean things that would cause you to stumble, things that are heavy, or burdens. So things like your job, problems in house, such and such, all those things. But if we were to look at it in the very first century, the cross is seen as something different from this. The cross does not equal burden to them. The cross meant one thing and one thing only: death by the most painful and humiliating means human beings could develop. 2,000 years later, Christians view the cross as a cherished symbol of atonement, forgiveness, grace, and love. But in Jesus' day, the cross represented nothing but to torture's death, because the Romans forced convicted criminals to carry their own crosses to the place of crucifixion. Bearing a cross meant carrying their own executive device while facing ridicule along the way to death. Meaning this: therefore, take up your cross and follow me, means being willing to die in order to follow Jesus Christ, which is to mean dying to self. It is the call to absolute surrender. As I mentioned earlier, in our Christian life, we make a lot of sacrifices. We tend to let go of a lot of things. After each time Jesus commanded cross bearing, He said, "For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me will save it. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit his very self?" Luke 9:24-25. Although the call is tough, the reward is matchless. So are you ready to take up your cross and follow Him? In my life, I know there's a lot of things for me to let go. There's a lot of things for me to, let's say in the past, I've love to do a lot of things, and I love to be a part of a lot of things. Not the best or good of things. And I enjoyed them. In our lives, there may be something else similar to that. I don't know what it is. Only you and God knows what that is. But following Jesus is easy when life runs smoothly. Our true commitment to Him is revealed during trials. Jesus assured us that trials will come to His followers, written in John 16:33. Discipleship demands sacrifice, and Jesus never hides that cost from us. So in Luke 9, verses 57 to 62, 3 people seemed willing to follow Jesus. When Jesus questioned them further, their commitment was half-hearted at best. They failed to count the cost of following Him. None was willing to take up his cross and crucify upon it his own interests. When we choose to follow Christ, it means letting go. It means forgetting. But then when we allow our interests to take over and grasp what we want to follow, it's hard for us to just commit. Therefore, Jesus appeared to dissuade them. How different from the typical gospel presentation. How many people would respond to an altar call that went, "Come follow Jesus and you may face the loss of friends," or even maybe the loss of family, or the loss of reputation, career, and possibly even your life. The number of false converts would likely decrease. Such a call is what Jesus meant when He said, "Take up your cross and follow me." These are just some questions that I'm gonna show to you guys. If you wonder if you're ready to take up your cross, consider these questions. Are you willing to follow Jesus if it means losing some of your closest friends? Are you willing to follow Jesus if it means alienation from your own family? Are you willing to follow Jesus if it means the loss of your reputation? Are you willing to follow Jesus if it means losing your job? Are you willing to follow Jesus if it means even losing your own life? Looking at these questions, it's very apparent to me that there's at least one thing out of these questions that is going to hit someone. I don't know what it is, but certainly there will be. For someone that has a high-paying job, and then God asks you out of nowhere to sacrifice that for you, are you willing to do that? Are you willing to lose your job just so you can follow Him? Or let's say you have in your family, there isn't really anyone that follows Christ like you do. And are you willing to turn your back so that you would follow Christ? Or even your reputation. Now I know reputation plays a big part in our lives, in a way that we build up our rep so that we become known somewhere else. Are you willing to let go of your reputation so that you may follow Christ? Following and becoming a disciple of Christ is very difficult. But these are just some questions. If you can answer some of these, then probably you are ready. We can't be a disciple if we can't even follow and accept these things. I know it's hard to do, but we have to face the reality and see that following Jesus is not a joking matter, but is a serious matter. For that, this is the second condition. In Luke 14:20-34. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? Or if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, "This person began to build and wasn't able to finish." Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. When the first Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off, and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? Through these verses, there's two parables. The parable of the man or of the builder, and the parable of a king with an army. Generally, this two parables has one thing in common. When I read both of these, the first thing that comes to mind is insufficiency. For the builder, it's insufficiency in money and in materials. For the king, it's insufficiency in number of army members and strength. Therefore, when insufficiency comes, what happens? You stumble. You let go. And it becomes unfinished. This is the same way in our own Christian lives. We should first think of we should first sit down and think of, as a disciple, what is it that I'm going to lose? What is it that I'm lacking in? Finally, God connects all of this verse in verse 33. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciple. Now, earlier I've talked about sacrifices. In your own Christian lives, have we made any sacrifices at all? Have we made that sacrifice into letting go or forgetting or even turning away from the old past? Have we decided to forget that I used to live like this? I used to do this bad stuff, or I used to be involved in these things. Like I said earlier, we tend to love a lot of things, but we also have to remember that we have to forget a lot of things, and we have to let go of a lot of things. Henceforth, we're making sacrifices. Now, I've read this somewhere, and I know it says like this. Whenever we come through a stumble or we come through a problem, what's the first thing we try to find? We try to find pleasure in something. Well, that's not the right way. When we generally think of something that's causing us stress, we find something that's going to replace the stress and give us that pleasurable feeling. And that's where addiction happens. And that's where certain things that we know we shouldn't be doing happens. That's why this third one is don't take risks, renounce everything. In gambling, I know we take a lot of risk and we take a lot of chances. But when we follow Christ and we become a disciple of Christ, there's no risks in that. In gambling, we know that we take risks because there's a reward at the end that we can get. But in Christ, we don't just take a gamble. We know for sure that when we let go and we renounce everything, that we'll receive something at the end, a big reward. Because we already know that when we renounce everything, we will receive something at the end. For God is not like when you give everything up right off the bat, you're already receiving the greatest reward. Now, like I said earlier, a lot of us have a lot of reputation. A lot of us have great jobs. You feel as if that's a part of something that we have to let go or no. Sometimes we hesitate when it comes to giving up everything. But don't think and just let Him take care of the rest. Sometimes we overthink a lot of things. Sometimes we let our mind do the thinking and not our instinct of, let's talk to God first. Because we're so caught up in thinking that I'm going to lose everything that we forget. Keep in mind, we rely in God. We rely in Jesus Christ. Now that's where I'm going to end. Conclusion, there are costs when being a disciple. Sometimes the cost is nothing to us, but the most we're going to be facing costs when becoming a disciple. Today, I've only said 3 things. To some, there may have been a lot more than that. But loving less of our own family, but loving Him more. Taking up our crosses and following Him. And finally, giving up everything to follow Him. In life, not everything is going to be smooth sailing. I think that's what makes living for Christ such an amazing feeling. Because something is set for you to learn at every moment in your life. When you know that your life is just going into a fluid motion, that's not a life I want to live. I want to live a life that is of danger for Christ. Because we all know that once we do become a disciple of Christ, our life is not just going to be simple. It's not just going to be easy. Now, all I want you guys to know, are you ready to face those things? Are you ready to face the things that you're going to lose when you do become a follower of Christ? Let's close in a word of prayer. God, I know there's a lot of things that can be going through our minds right now. I know there's a lot of things that can be setting us afar from you. But I know, Lord, one thing is certain. When we follow and we decide to become your disciples, that we will face struggles, we will face difficulties. But we know that we are doing this because we know that we are guaranteed something in you. So Lord, I pray for you today in behalf of everyone here, that you may instill in our hearts and our minds the aspects and the things that we could potentially let go, the things that we can potentially love less, the things that we can potentially sacrifice. For Lord, we know that we're doing everything for your glory and for your kingdom. So Lord, help us to become better disciples. Help us to show to others as well the things that you have already shown us. Lord, just be with us for the rest of the day. We dedicate our whole lives for you. Let's pray.